Hello, everybody, and welcome to Community Cleric. I am here tonight with Abadonne, who is my super special guest, and I am so excited for this. I think I booked you like a while ago, so I've been waiting for this one to come around. Thank you for being here with me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I have also been super looking forward to this, so I'm very excited.
And you have a big night because you're going to do something after this too.
And then work. hmm
So good. And then work. Whoa, wait. That's party foul. That's not how we do things. But look, we gotta make money. I'm not gonna.
Hopefully, some of this comes off between now and then, but
Oh,
we'll see how it goes.
sure. You're not in a line of work where this would be beneficial to.
Sadly, no. I work with senior citizens, so I feel like this might cause some confusion. So
I
I will be
mean,
scrubbing with Dawn soap
I
before I
mean,
leave.
look, I don't know if you've ever gotten to play in anything with JJ, who has been on like a couple of things, on our channel and on other channels. JJ was with me on Lord of the Rings Rangers of the North and came in full barbarian. She does like personal home care and was like full barbarian garb for her friend, and he didn't even question it. He told her she
Amazing.
looked good. I was like, look, let's go.
I guess if you lean into anything hard enough, you can get away with it.
I
I'm gonna
mean,
have to see what I can get away with at work.
maybe not start with the full though. I can understand that. Hello everybody, welcome to Community Cleric. My name is Sarah. I am here in Mi'kma'ki. This is the traditional and unceded territories of the Mi'kmaq people in Nova Scotia, Canada, and it is my very huge delight to have one of Girls Run These World's very own, one of the very first players on our second ever stream was Regency Remixed. And so oh, Anne's in chat. Anne's already here for it.
Hi, Anne.
Anne, of course, was the DM for that, or the facilitator for that show. Okay, without I'll give you some time at the end to tell everybody all about the other things, and feel free to sprinkle in whatever else you're doing. But at first, I just want to know, how did you become a nerd?
I am the youngest of four kids, and the gap between the oldest and I is almost 16 years, and he is a huge comic book nerd.
Okay.
So I have, you can't see them because they're covered, but I have the Lantern Corps symbols tattooed on the inside of my arm because we watched that all the time when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
I spent
Who's the
most of the
best?
nine.
Who's the best?
I'm gonna say Dexter because he's a cat and also a Red Lantern.
I can't argue with that. All right, keep going. Your brother introduced you.
But I spent most of the 90s watching like X-Men and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Gundam Wing and all kinds of stuff like that. So it was kind of a natural progression. But everybody in my family is kind of a nerd. Everybody loves to read to the point where you cannot put a book down around someone in my family because we're all thieves
Mm-hmm,
and someone will
mm-hmm,
take it and then not
mm-hmm.
give it back until they're done. But my mother loves horror, she loves monsters, she loves anything that has to do with like spooky things or fantasy things. So she took my brothers to see Star Wars in theaters just to see all the aliens. So it's kind of a generational thing. And my older sister M and I are very, very close. And I spent a very long time wanting to be exactly her. And once Marvel came out, it became a thing that we could share
Mm.
without the age gap. She's a little
Right.
bit older, so it was just kind of a neutralizer of us just both loving the same thing very, very much. I started going to conventions. I fell really in love with Doctor Who, and that was actually my first cosplay at Comic
Amazing.
Con, which we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So from a very early age, nerdy things were around, but I got really like it became a core part of my personality in high school.
Okay, so I have some follow-ups. Best doctor.
Woof, what a question. Okay.
Look, I told you before the stream that I'm not here for gotchas, and then immediately threw that out the window.
Uh, 11 is my doctor.
Okay.
He was the first doctor that I saw from regeneration to regeneration.
Right.
But in terms of seasons and companions that I liked best. I really loved the Ninth Doctor. I mean, I love 10, of course. Who doesn't love David Tennant?
Of
But I feel
course.
like the Ninth Doctor kind of just gets shunted off to the side. And he was so alternately soft and
Mhm.
severe. And I just really, really loved his Doctor.
I think Eccleston has really gotten like he is the Charlie Brown of sci-fi franchises, right? Because like along comes Lucy to pull that football every single time. He definitely the remake of Doctor Who would not have been successful without him. He brought the right amount of gravitas for people to go, oh, and for a worldwide audience, not just the UK audience that was already going to be watching, but like a worldwide audience to be like, oh, this actually is something that we could take seriously. It was, on during this kind of prime time of age of the nerd. And so I think, and then like Thor. He was in Thor 2 The Dark World and again like got the shaft because what a cool character. But you couldn't really tell or hear it was him and the character wasn't really given like, you know, yeah, I don't know. I feel
The
that way
same
about Lee
thing,
Pace's from the original Guardians of the Galaxy too. You don't get to really fall in love with the badness of it, you know?
a lot of the time I feel like they get really into the makeup with things like that and the prosthetics and the props
Mm-hmm.
and kind of lose the actor inside of the costume.
Yeah.
And he got the same treatment with GI Joe. He was Destro and was in a mask for like half the movie and only showed up to say weird things and then disappear. And it's such a cool character that he really could have done something with
Right.
had they not been more focused on the fact that Channing Tatum was in the movie. So it he just keeps, also he was in Gone in 60 Seconds. That they did give him a pretty
No,
good role in.
was he?
He was the villain
He
in
was the
Gone in 60
bad guy?
Seconds. Mm-hmm.
That is a movie that I don't know whether or not it's going to stand up to the test of time, but that was my jam.
It
Um,
absolutely
the
does.
soundtrack for that movie, listen,
I love Nicolas Cage. I really do. I love everything that he
yeah,
does. I'll try anything that he's involved in, no
yeah.
matter how bad it looks. And occasionally I'll just decide to go and watch new Nicolas Cage movies. And I haven't seen that one because I was really young when it came out.
Mm-hmm,
And I definitely texted my older sister and had to explain that Gone in 60 Seconds made me cry. And she
mm-hmm.
still has not let me live that down. It's
I
okay. I'm going to make her watch it with me.
I mean, not to date myself, but like it's not a surprise to people. That movie came out, I think I was maybe grade 11 or 12, and I worked at a movie theater for a little bit. And so like it was one of those things. There was also one with there was several, but Gone in 60 Seconds, I liked the soundtrack was banging. The soundtrack was excellent.
And they
That I
got
definitely
Delroy
remember.
Lindo to
And
come and just be himself.
like but Delroy Lindo, who's the other guy who's in that's in he was in Delroy Lindo and the other guy were both also in Armageddon together.
I know exactly who you're
You know who
talking
I'm
about, and
talking
I
about.
can never think of his name.
I'm gonna IMDb it because it is worth
Fair.
IMDbing. Uh Gone in 60
But that's another
Seconds.
movie from the 90s that I love. So
Look at Deep Impact and Armageddon. Come on now. And
I was
Angelina
terrified of
Jolie was in
Armageddon.
that movie. God,
Yeah, she had like the
I'm gonna have to go back
twisty
and watch it.
dreads.
Giovanni Ribisi, Scott Caan, who later is in like Ocean's 11 is absolutely my jam. Love it. Him and I know we don't like Casey Affleck anymore, but like that whole the hey buddy, hey
That whole
pal, hey guy,
dynamic.
come on,
Mm-hmm.
come on,
He stole my
so good.
balloons. Yeah, everything about that dynamic is fantastic.
Timothy Oliphant was in that movie. Look, Will Patton, that's the guy's name. That's who we're thinking of. Just so good. Yeah,
Does
what an
not get
excellent.
nearly enough credit.
I did not anticipate us going down a Nick Cage tangent tonight, but
I
I'm here
absolutely
for it.
did.
Look, I am so glad for tonight. Let me tell you. My mom is visiting me. I haven't seen my mom since January of 2020. And because I live in Canada, she's from the States, and the borders have been closed. So she's visiting me for the first time in a couple of years. I'm certain that she can hear me, but I don't know that she's ever watched Community Cleric, and she probably has no idea what's going on, other than she's only hearing one side of this conversation, and I'm okay with it. We did have a lot of tangents, Anne. Not that I don't expect a tangent. I didn't expect the tangent to be a Nick Cage tangent. That's all I'm saying. But look,
I go on Nick Cage tangents fairly often. It's actually kind of a problem.
Can we say that Danny Pudi's impersonation of Nick Cage in that episode of Community? Have you seen?
Yes.
Danny Pudi in anything, to be honest with you. But
he has just this knack
so
for like the weird body language of Nicolas Cage, and I just
but with such a different body shape. Like, I think, he's a good mime. Like, I don't think people really understand how hard it is to mime stuff, but on top of like the facial expression and the intonation, the mimicry of it is so good.
I actually dated a mime.
It's such a hard. I did mime classes in theater school, and people sleep on it because they think of like the stereotypical like French busker kind of a deal. It's legit hard. Mr. Noodle from Sesame Street is the shit, man.
He's acting in literally a space the size of a closet, and he's acting for his whole life.
You know, and like, I don't care what anybody says, Interstellar would not have been as good if it wasn't for Mr. Noodle.
I think most things wouldn't be as good if Mr. Noodle wasn't involved. I would like to know why he's locked in a closet hell dimension. That is a very serious concern that I have for Mr. Noodle, but in general, I do love him.
He came, that actor knew my drama teacher in high school. I went to high school in Northern California, just outside of San Jose. And he came and would do a mime workshop at my high school every year. And he just made it look so good. And I just have such I still teach mime. I teach middle school and I teach mime when I teach drama. So good. You said books were always around. So this is my second follow-up question. Fantasy or sci-fi, or like, what were the hot books that were there? What were the best genres in your family? What are your favorite genres?
In my family, there were actually a lot of like mafia books. Because I'm the baby, my mother is very adamant that like we're not watching children's TV all day. I worked all day. I'm not coming home and watching Nick Jr. So I grew up with very little censorship. So I think before the time I was 7, I had seen the entire Godfather series from start to finish. It's my whole family's favorite movie. So there was a lot of Mario Puzo. There was a lot of kind of like gangster style books, especially my older brothers. That was kind of like their more masculine take.
Right.
Every time somebody asks me about books that I like, I suddenly forget every book that I've ever read.
Yeah, that's a natural thing.
Growing up, I really liked fantasy. I loved like Inkheart, anything that was very, very mystical and very storybook. I really liked. I also read a lot of like weird niche young adult fiction, like Chris Crutcher. I was super, super into his books. I read anything that I could get my hands on. So like I definitely have books on my shelf right now that have teachers' names on the spines because I stole them from my teachers.
You didn't steal them. Teachers, honestly, we act annoyed because usually we bought it with our own money. But if a kid really is moved by a book like that, I will tell you, I will gladly, first off, I buy my books at Value Village. Secondly, I will go buy another copy to have, because then I can recommend it. I'll be like, this kid liked it so much, they stole it from me. That immediately gives a book street cred.
That's true. Okay, that makes me feel a lot better, actually. Yeah, I loved reading anything, and then I got really, really into books in middle school. Well, I was always really into books, but they became kind of a lifeline for me because puberty sucked like it does for everybody.
Yep.
I got into classics because I was watching Gilmore Girls, and I found a list of every book that Rory Gilmore reads in the series.
Yeah.
So I have all 500, and I've just been chipping away at it for years, and it really, really got me to like sit down and read classics, even the ones that I knew I wasn't going to enjoy. I hate Dostoevsky. It's just like 900 pages of I hate women, and it drives me crazy. But I read it. Faust and Edna St. Vincent Millay and just all kinds of stuff that was on that list. Also, a couple of punk oral autobiographies of like the history of the scene that were on the
Yeah.
list, which I still love to this day and recommend to this day because they are so cool. And they have interviews with like Dex Holland from The Offspring and Kat Hanna from Bikini Kill. And it just gave me such a big range of what I liked to read. Um, Now I'm on a big horror kick. Now I like reading spooky books. I'm rereading Hemlock Grove. Um, the author of The Perks of Being a Wallflower wrote a
Mhm.
horror novel. It's called Imaginary Friend, and it's thick. It's like 500 pages. I haven't started it yet, but I'm very excited for that. Um, Carmilla, anything gay or about vampires, I'll
Mhm.
absolutely read
Mhm.
several times.
Mhm.
Um, I think generally I just like books that kind of challenge the form. I really like House of Leaves, even though it's absolutely maddening to read, and everything else by that man is illegible because you can't just do whatever you want with words on the page. Um, Anything that really tries to deconstruct what a story is, what language is, how the pieces fit together to create something that creates a suspension of disbelief. So now I would say my four. There are four. There are four favorite authors who I go back to like very regularly. Um, Chuck Palahniuk, I
Mhm.
absolutely adore everything he's written, even with all of its vulgarity. Sylvia Plath, because I am a stereotype. Henry Rollins, who is actually a beautiful poet and writes really incredible visceral prose, and Anne Carson, who I didn't discover until a few years ago, but she's a classics major who teaches like Greek and Latin, and she deconstructs famous Greek myths. So there is an
Ooh.
entire short novel that she's written in prose that compares Helen of Troy and Marilyn Monroe.
Somebody needs to get that link over to Kat, who's about to run our Mythic Odyssey of Theros campaign. That would be a good read for her. I definitely, as a reader right now, I'm a middle school teacher, so I read a lot of my students' work, obviously. But her name was Anne Carson. My mod is asking in chat. Anne Carson.
Mm-hmm.
Anne Carson. Um, I but I tend to read a lot of stuff that I'm going to be able to recommend to my students. So like young adult is my jam, and in particular graphic novels, because they're they do require so much more. Like if I never hear another teacher or librarian say graphic novels aren't real reading, honestly, like to have to um did I lose you back?
My camera is just
Your
randomly
camera
turning
is
itself
just
off.
going.
Are we good, bud? Why?
It, it just happens. Nobody moved too quick. Nope.
I'm give me just 1 second here.
You take all the time you want.
I spilled juice. No, goodness gracious. Okay, we are going to get creative with this heat problem here.
No, no worries. You know what? You do that for a second, and I'm just going to go through some of the stuff that's going on Girls Run These Worlds, because it's been a little bit since we have done that, and we have so much going on this channel right now.
Perfect.
Monday nights, you can catch. Oh, see, I opened Discord. I should have opened the calendar. Monday nights, Fuzka is here in chat. She is the DM for Claws of Cosvena. Oh, I almost said it wrong, Fuzka. Did you hear that? Which is a D&D horror game. It's a D&D 5e horror homebrew. I know more of what it's about, but I'm not going to say anything in case her players hear. I know all of this stuff because I approve everything, so I read the creator apps. Tuesday nights, Harsh Realms, which is a kids on bike Stranger Things kind of 90s vibe that's set in the Pacific Northwest in Thrifton, which is outside of Seattle. Wednesday during the day, we have Lancer, Love in the Time of Mech, which is a Lancer game that is hardcore min-maxing, but also super thirsty. Wednesday night, Roll for Luck is a D&D homebrew game set in Amelgarth with our own founder Ryu as the DM. Tonight you're with us here. Thursday it's Community Cleric, and then right after this is Dark Rites, which is a Deviant the Renegade stream, which is set in the world of darkness. So like Vampire the Masquerade, Changeling the Dreaming, Werewolf the something else. There's like
Werewolf
a whole
The Reckoning, I think.
Werewolf the Reckoning, and then something the Apocalypse.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I had the book somewhere on my computer and looked at it once and was like, this is dense, and just walked away.
The Onyx Path people are going to be upset with me. It's a Deviant the Renegade stream. That's what I needed to get across. Fridays, we do Candlekeep Mysteries. It's MISS Mysteries. Get it? Which obviously is a D&D module. And then this Sunday is our session 0 for Mythic Therosian Odyssey Strands of Fate. It's a Mythic Theros. It's going to be so good. It's going to be so good. But it doesn't start until next Sunday. But it's session 0. We're casting right now. If you're watching, please go check our Twitter, which I'm going to link right here, because we're casting right now for Briar and Bramble, which is a one-shot where you are a displaced, wayward woodland animal in the English woodlands, and you have to go and find a new home. And it's this lovely indie game that the developer came to us and said, would you consider running this? And we said yes. And so, yes, we have 20 shows that are in or have been in production. And I have a creator app list of 50 more things that we could greenlight at any point. The other thing that you'll find on our Twitter is the producer app. If you would like to produce, if you would like to do production for us, or graphics, or moderation on Twitch or in Discord, go and hit up the producer, the tech app, because we need those people too. Okay, how do we think?
I think so. Here's the thing. I spilled juice in my computer a couple of years ago, and she's holding up like a champ, but she does get very, very hot sometimes. So I think she just overheated. But
and it's warm there today.
It's sweltering in this room, so I'm not surprised, but I think she'll hold. I think she's good now.
Okay. That's okay. If it doesn't, look, we've still got you. And you know what? I forgot to turn on the podcast thing. Ryu is going to be so mad at me. I'm the worst. I'm sorry, Ryu. I'm sorry. I'm just going to hang my head in shame for a minute. How did you get into TTRPG?
By accident. Entirely by accident. On Facebook, one of my leftist friends from the weird side of Facebook where everyone just wants to argue all the time. I spent a lot of years there just arguing about social justice. One of those friends texted me and said, hey, so I know somebody who wants to run an all-black D&D game, and it seems like something that you would like, and she seems like someone that you'd get along with. Is it okay if I pass your name along? And I had never played any tabletop before. And in fact, went out of my way not to be perceived. I went to art school and worked as a stage tech so nobody would see me. So no one is more surprised than me that this is what I do with my time now. But I threw my hat in the ring, and A. Jordan Lambert, who is the DM of Blackness and Dragons on Q Times, took a chance on me, and we are getting ready for our 5th season now. So it is
amazing,
really, really bizarre, because that was kind of where I started. When I started, I didn't even really know how to play D&D, and I went home the weekend before our finale and watched half of a season of Dimension 20 and came back and said, I know how to play now.
Yeah. Really, like we share a lot of love on this show for Dimension 20 and Critical Role and some of those bigger, actual plays, because they really have opened up the world and made it accessible of not just can you read a book and figure out a rule system. You can watch these people do it. It's not that hard. And for those of us who reading something, written comprehension is not our strength. hearing Matt Mercer or Brennan Lee Mulligan or Abria or that bronze girl or, you know, whomever else come and actually just do the thing where somebody says, I think I'd like to do this. And they go, well, that's a this role. That is how I learned,
Hmm.
you know, and that is how it's how it made sense to me. And so, you know, then when I read the book or then when I read D&D Beyond, I have context for, oh, it's like this, which happened, you know, at this game or this episode. And so I understand what it's trying to do. You know, so yeah, look, no hate here for the big actual plays or for any actual plays, because they really do. They make a lot of difference for people to see them in reality of how they're played. So yeah.
Yeah, I managed to get my sister into it. We watched A Crown of Candy together, and she loved Zach Oyama's terrifying rabbit character.
Zach
And
Oyama can do no wrong.
Zach Oyama is one of the funniest people, not
Hmm.
even in actual plays, just that exists
Yeah.
and is so casual about how
Yeah.
funny he is.
Yeah.
I'm always so excited when he's back at the table. Um, but even just getting to see like how group dynamics work at the table, getting to see like people actually communicating and saying, hey, I got this, like I can heal us or I can take the hit, and understanding kind of that back and forth was really important for me as a player to learn how to talk to other people.
Hmm.
As a very very introverted academic, talking to people has never been my strong suit, so it taught me how to be like, hey, I think that thing you're doing is not a great idea, and not completely ruin the vibe. So I very much appreciate that. And I genuinely don't think I would be DMing if I hadn't started watching Dimension 20 and just seen what Brennan Lee Mulligan is capable of.
Hmm. Yeah, I think for some people, I understand why watching Brennan Lee Mulligan or Matt Mercer or Abria or like any of these B Dave, any Lauren Obo, like any of these amazing DMs, I can see how some people would be intimidated. But for me, it was like, oh, they are going to do this amazing thing, and that's great for them and their table. But also like the story that I'm telling is important to my table. My table is just as valid as that table. And like it really broke it down for me. I didn't feel intimidated by watching it. I felt like, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe because I come from like a theater background. So like I could go and watch if we were doing Grease and the next high school over was doing Grease, I could go watch their production and be like, oh, those are definitely that's a good idea. And I think that I would maybe want to do something similar to that, but I'm not but also it doesn't make my art any less art. And so maybe because I come from like that theater background, maybe that makes a difference. I don't know, but I've never felt like like watching somebody else has made it more inaccessible. I've always felt like, oh, this is another way of seeing the way that the universe can be, you know?
Exactly. And I at first when I started DMing, it was very, very daunting because I started with Brenley Mulligan and was like, oh no. But now I love watching other DMs, other storytellers, depending on what the system is,
Mhm, mhm,
because it I've only been playing D&D for almost 2 years now. I've
mhm,
only been playing tabletops for almost 2 years. So watching other people run games lets me see what's possible.
mhm,
When Jason Carl sat at the table as an NPC in LA by Night, I was so blown away. I texted my sister, who had no idea what I was talking about and did not care, but let me talk about it anyway, bless her heart, because it just blew my mind. Or Matt Mercer pulling out 4 dragons and being like, figure it out.
yeah.
Those are things that I would not naturally gravitate toward as a new DM, because it feels, it's that question of like, am I being too hard on them? Is the
Mhm,
challenge rating too high? Things that don't really come innately with learning to run a game.
mhm,
So getting to see other DMs be like, actually, it's just fire, and this demon's very upset with you. Getting to see Calamity, getting to watch
mhm,
Kolok 1991, and just seeing the different ways you can interact with your players, you can
yeah.
interact with the audience, you can interact with the story, has been really phenomenal for me as a
Mhm,
storyteller. It's made me work a lot harder to earn the emotional responses that I want to get.
mhm. I think um I think one thing that I miss about like not that I watched live the early days of Critical Role, but I have gone back obviously, and like Vox Machina is of all of the big actual plays, Vox Machina for me was really like the one that I resonate with the most, because as a DM, I like telling the hero's journey. I like telling kind of the Lord of the Rings, very classic stories. And I love watching other stuff, but that for me is the story that I like to tell, is like that very classic fantasy story. But I think something that we're not going to get to see, because now they pre-record, and yes, it ups the production value, and God love the captions that they can do now because of pre-recording. But the very early days of Vox Machina, when chat would be like arguing with like Matt Mercer and how he ruled on something, and he would go, no, I understand, chat, that this is what the book says, this is why, this is my rule, and this is why. And just hearing somebody explicitly say, I don't have to read the book cover to cover, and even if I did, I don't have to do it that way, I just have to be consistent at my table for my players. That for me was like the biggest revelation of, oh yeah, no, actually that makes a lot of sense for me. And I wish that there was more. I'm sure somebody does a show like this that's for DMs, but really breaking down the DM process is a show that I would love to run.
Brennan does, actually.
Who?
Brennan does. He has a podcast and a show on Dropout called Adventuring Academy, where he just hangs
I've
out with a
seen
bunch of
that.
different DMs.
Yeah.
The very first episode is the one where he's talking about like building NPCs with Lou Wilson, who had just started running his own campaign. And it still is something that I go back and refer to when I'm working on like a group of NPCs or a major NPC. I still go back to kind of Brennan's basic formula, because the way he breaks down D&D in particular is so accessible and so understandable that anytime I have questions, that's usually the first place that I go.
Right. See, that's really interesting, because I have seen like clips of that off of YouTube. But like the Handbook or Helper series for me was like, because I teach middle school and because I run the D&D club at the middle school, or at the high school, like at whatever school I'm teaching at, that is the series that I send my kids to, because they're like 5 minutes. Here's the super basics. Like, here's what you absolutely need to know to sit down at a table tomorrow. But like, yeah, I'm going to have to go get that podcast and listen to those this summer while I'm like going out for walks, because I'm super into that. For a long time, I've thought about doing a community cleric that's like a cast edition, where I interview whole cast to get them to do like talking about their show and their story arcs and stuff, because I always love watching those story arc wrap ups, and to get to hear from everybody like this. I never got to play this out, but this is what was going on in my head. This is where I was going with that. Yeah, I thank you for being here, because this is awesome. We're like halfway done. So I have to start editing which questions I'm going to ask you, because this is good. You talked briefly about cosplay. Talk to me about, how did you get into cosplay? What are your favorites? What are your top tips? My daughter's going to cosplay for the first time at Gen Con, and she's super stoked, but like, we're just starting to put together the costume. We ordered a couple of things from like Shein. Like, I don't sew, so like we're kind of piecing things together that already exist. So tell me about like your top tips in cosplay, and how did you get involved, and what's your favorite cosplay that you've done?
I got involved with cosplay. My high school best friend got me into Doctor Who, and it was series 3 was where we started, because she was obsessed with Harry Lloyd at the time, and he's a guest in that season. But Martha Jones was kind of one of the first times since like Storm that I saw anything remotely resembling me in media. And she was just a normal person from a dysfunctional family, just trying to get somewhere in life. And she resonated with me. I thought that she was really cool. I knew that people didn't like her, but I loved Martha. And so my first cosplay was Martha Jones with the red jacket. I borrowed my high school best friend's mom's red leather jacket for the costume. We went to San Diego Comic-Con, and we ended up taking pictures with a bunch of people there for a meetup. And recently, I invited someone to guest on my channel, and after inviting them, realized I have pictures with them somewhere of us as the Doctor, Martha, and Jack Harkness.
That's
So we're
amazing.
both still searching for those. It's a very, very small world.
It is.
That was where I started. When cosplay really became like a thing for me was when I decided to cosplay She-Hulk, who is my main babe, the love of my life, my favorite costume always and forever, and also an absolute nightmare to get into. It's now I do almost exclusively body paint cosplays or like punk renditions or like different variation, like fan art versions. But She-Hulk, there are a couple that I just go really, really screen accurate for or comic accurate. So my She-Hulk is specifically the solo series She-Hulk, the Charles Soule and Kevin Wada watercolor She-Hulk. And it taught me how to use water-based paint. Being able to see how they did it in watercolors on the page showed me exactly how to do it on my face. And weirdly, it was a huge confidence booster for me to run around in a jumpsuit, neon green, because there's absolutely no hiding
Right.
in that situation. So you have to be prepared to be perceived. And I've learned, for me, doing the scary thing first and then being scared is the way to go. There's plenty of time for me to have an existential crisis about it later, but why miss the event to do that? So She-Hulk is definitely my favorite. It's about 5 hours to get into her, and about 3 of that is her face. My other favorite is Poison Ivy, who is also green, but she's a different shade of green. That costume is an absolute nightmare, and it's why I haven't worn it in a very long time. It's a corseted jumpsuit, but it's got crotch snaps. And the way that everything laces up and locks into each other, I can only walk like 3 or 4 feet before I have issues. So my roommate and I became best friends because it was our first con together and I couldn't reach them. So it just got to the point where I regularly had to embarrass myself on the streets of Anaheim and just scream, hey, if you could just kneel real quick and handle this for me. There's no more intimate way to make friends, I don't think.
I mean, and you find out you find out who your friends are for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said because it reminds me of there is a woman who started a blog called Cake Rex, and then she went on to do a blog called Epbot, which is like about just kind of being a nerd. And she has done some pretty tremendous cosplay. She does like the junk collector from Labyrinth. And it is like a legit fantastic cosplay. And her name is Jen Yates. That's who her name is.
Jen Yates.
She talks about she does not want to be perceived in real life. She struggles with really intense anxiety. And she talks about when she's cosplaying, it's not herself. Like there is this barrier of she is not the one that's being perceived. And so she doesn't have that level of anxiety, in the way that that she would if she were in public or, being seen as herself. So I'm curious, like, does that ring true for you, or is it still very like intense to be seen in costume?
Oh, I would say that I'm gonna smash my computer. I would say that 100% rings true for me. Especially because it becomes kind of ritualistic. I typically get into paint by myself unless I'm doing Poison Ivy, and then I need like a 6 hands and a team of Sherpa to get all of me covered. But for She-Hulk in particular, it's just 3 hours of me staring at myself in a mirror. Usually I have like whoever I'm rooming with around to talk to, but it really is just me focusing on my own face and looking at my imperfections and looking at the lines of my own face and then changing them. And it very much is this kind of ritualistic feeling of donning armor. Large crowds stress me out, strangers stress me out, cons stress me out, but once I'm in a costume, it's a completely different experience.
Right.
Especially as She-Hulk, because she's prone to reading people the riot act without, swearing, just very, very casual dressing down, always looks fabulous, but is also a smashing machine and will break your expensive furniture. And having that attitude walking through a con is I see it in the pictures. I genuinely see, like, for that time period, I just lived as Jen Walters and it was absolutely wonderful.
Well,
Or for that time period, I was Punk Storm and it's something I'd never wear in my real life, but was absolutely incredibly liberating to
mhm,
wear.
mhm. What, and you do not have to, do not answer this if you don't want to. What's your take on the new She-Hulk show?
I have been waiting for camera. I have been waiting for the She-Hulk show since the Marvel Cinematic cycle started.
Okay.
I love Tatiana Maslany.
Hmm.
I know that there are some questions about the CGI and people want to be smug about it. And if they say something that makes them take away the big green lady show, I'm gonna be very upset. Um, I love Jennifer Walters as a character. I think that she is, most of the time she lives, is 8 foot tall, bright green, and still wearing a designer suit. And I think there's something so powerful about the fact that even in her stature, this thing happened to her, but she has found a way to make it something that nobody can argue with, nobody can dispute it, no one can really tell her anything about herself. She knows she's 8 feet tall and bright green, and she knows that that has nothing to do with who she is as a person, how she operates, how good she is at her job. And I think that for me, like, Jen Walters is a role model for me because she really does not care what anybody else thinks of her. She
Hmm.
cares about getting the job done to the best of her ability. And if she looks silly, if she looks out of place, that's just that's just fine with her.
Hmm.
Um, and that I think I take a little piece of each person I cosplay and just kind of hang on to something about them. So that sense of deep earned confidence with Jen Walters is
Mm.
something that I try very much to just kind of carry with me. I'm gonna throw my computer out the window. It is very hot right now.
Look, I don't want you to throw your computer out the window, because that would mean seeing so much less of you across other things. How about if, we've got like only 15 minutes left. How about if we cut tonight short, but I can immediately rebook you and we will do a whole other hour. You'll be my first guest that I ever have back twice.
I
Um,
would absolutely love to do
I would
that.
so absolutely love to do that. And that way I will just cut both of these together and it will look like one long interview later on. And we'll do it like in the winter when it's not so hot for your computer. One last question. Who is the cat?
The oh, the orange cat?
The orange cat.
The orange cat is my very best friend in the entire world. Her name is Lucifer because when we got her, she was an unholy terror. We were going to take her back to the shelter, and she punched her way out of the cardboard carrier and informed us that she was staying with us, and that was 11 years ago.
Hmm. Hmm.
She's 14 years old. She's incredibly cranky and incredibly smart. So I just leave my window open for her. She goes in and out as she pleases. She comes back whenever she wants. She knows where home is. She knows how to let me know, like, let me out of the door. I need to go get water. She's very, very intuitive. She's an emotional support animal.
Hmm.
So that's my best friend through and through. That's one of my favorite beings on this planet.
I always love when I'm looking through people's Twitter to like do the sets and I find cats. Like I love dogs too, but like I'm a cat person. I have two of my own. So I always love when I get to include cats on the scenes, on the sets. Abadonne, quickly tell everybody, I'm going to throw your information into chat. You tell everybody where they can find you and we'll close things out.
Camera, are you gonna let me at least be visible for the outro? Come on, refocus. Refocus. Really? Problem solving. Oh,
Ooh,
maybe?
all right.
Oh, sure. Sure. Okay. This is better than being invisible. Now I really do look like a gemstone person, though all of the glitter on my face is catching the light now. Uh, yes, where you can find me. Um, you can find me right after this over on Lore Everlasting for Trail of Destruction, a journey through the Radiant Citadel. We are all playing gem people, and it's very, very exciting. So everybody will be in costume, and there are some absolutely phenomenal costumes to see. So I hope we see you there. Mondays, I am over on the Lady May's channel for the Many Hearts Project, which is a Doctor Who actual play with an original doctor, all original companions, and all of the companions are doctors,
I'm
but
so
like
excited.
medical and philosophical doctors.
Mhm.
We are having a blast. This week we went to Buffalo Wild Wings in the 80s. That was our big mission.
Mhm.
So that's a lot of fun. Tuesday, when Blackness and Dragons is on break, like it is right now, I kind of bounce around. Right now, you can find me on TTRPG for Guns, Bugs, and Steel, which is a Starship Troopers actual play, and we're fighting a big bug and doing some treason. So definitely check that out. And then I guess I should mention my own channel once ever. Exquisite Corpse Presents is where I live. It's where I spend most of my time. I'm the creator and producer over there and currently run two absolutely insane homebrew games. On Mondays, I run Divine Intervention, which is a D&D 5e completely homebrewed game where we follow a pack of newborn gods trying to navigate their newfound divinity. So right now they're learning the importance of answering prayer and like finding the people who pray to them and kind of figuring out how to navigate that. Also, gods can eat other gods, and that may or may not become a problem for them.
Mm.
So we'll see. And then on Saturdays, our flagship show, which is just the heart of my entire heart, Say Our Prayer for California, Sister Cities, was my second homebrew. It was my second homebrew. There was a companion campaign to that. It's D&D 5e homebrew, but it takes place in an alternate timeline to ours in a post-apocalyptic America with an oppressive government regime. Because again, I am a stereotype and I am a leftist. Um, there is no magic in that campaign, so everything is translated to technology. All of their spells, all of their potions, all of that stuff. We are having a great time, and we are back for season 2 this Saturday at 7 p.m. PST, and everyone just decided to get very gay and very dramatic this season. So there are gonna be fights, and I can't wait. I cannot wait for you to see it. Yes, those are the places that you can find me. Pretty much TTRPGs are all that I do, and that's honestly all that I want out of my life. So thanks for continuing to watch me do stuff and continuing to invite me to do cool stuff like this.
It has been my pleasure. I am so looking forward to having you back. I want your camera to chill down before your next thing because Radiant Citadel, I have been waiting for it for so long. So I'm excited to see what you all do with it. Everybody, open a second tab and go over and see that. Remember, tabs are free. There is your thing for tonight. Girls Run These Worlds. We're not rating anybody because Girls Run These Worlds is coming back in like 40 minutes with Dark Rights, Thursday nights, Dark Rights, and other forms of exploitation, which is a Deviant the Renegade stream. So thanks everybody for being here. If you're watching this on VOD Squad or YouTube later on, thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe and bell and all of the other stuff. And we will see you all next week with... See, I'm supposed to have my calendar open. D&D Elise is my guest next week, and that will be very fun. So thanks everybody for being here. We will see you next week, but stick around on the channel and also over at Be Never Ending. We'll see you guys later.